Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star's daily sports podcast. It's Tuesday, December 22nd, and I'm Blair Kerkhoff. We're talking college sports today with our beat writers, and there's plenty to discuss. We start with Kansas, which plays its second Big 12 game tonight, this time against West Virginia at Allen Fieldhouse. Jesse Newell and Gary Bedore break down the game against ranked teams, and Gary brings us up to speed on the Jayhawks' latest hoop commitment. Souichi Terada, who covers Mizzou, tells us who will and won't be playing for the Tigers in their bowl game against Iowa next week. Also, the nationally ranked Tigers have a big basketball game tonight against Bradley. Kansas State got some good news over the weekend when quarterback Skylar Thompson, who missed the majority of the season with an injury, announced he was returning. We get the update from Kellis Robinett. So let's get started talking college sports. Gary Bedore and Jesse Newell cover Kansas sports for the Star and Wichita Eagle, and they are leading off today's college Palooza show. It occurred to me that, at Christmas time, it usually kind of winds down for a little while, right? Just temporarily. But already we've got conference basketball games going on before Christmas and players having to decide whether to return or not. So, the COVID-19 pandemic has changed the schedule around for a lot of things, and it has for college sports. So here we are on December 22nd, and Kansas has its second league game tonight. It's a big one. West Virginia coming to Allen Fieldhouse. So, hey, Gary, lead us off. Tell us about what is – two ranked teams again, right? Kansas coming off a Texas Tech victory, and now West Virginia comes into Lawrence. What is this West Virginia team about, except for being really good?
They're 7-1. Like KU, they lost to Gonzaga. They've got two bigs that are good, Derek Culver and Oscar. I forget how.
Sheboy.
Yeah.
Sheboy, I think. Yeah, I have to think about it a lot.
But they also have decent guards. Their leading scorer is Miles McBride. Self was saying that they still pressure. They usually don't do it as much when they come to Allen Fieldhouse. But the weird thing is they only beat what's supposed to be a weak Iowa State team by 4 or 5 on Saturday. So that was in Morgantown. Not that the home court matters anymore, but people are wondering if they still have their same old problems of shooting. Self would get mad at that, and now they'll hit 1,000,000 threes tonight. But
right.
It should be interesting because do you play your bigs and try to match Culver and Oscar, or do you go with the guards most of the game and just try to do it that way?
That's the question, isn't it, Jesse?
It is. I hate talking about this like right before the game because I figure most people are going to hear this after the game's over and they're going to be like, oh, look at the idiot talking about how KU is not going to play big. And sure enough, they didn't play big, or they did play big. So, that is. Kansas kind of has right now a little bit of an identity crisis. They do. They play better with 5 guards, but they don't have much offense in for 5 guards. And it's really difficult when Bill Self comes out very frankly before the season and says he believes that David McCormick can be an All-America type player, and then he comes out and he's been this bad, and it's really hard to transition from, hey, you could be an All-American to like, hey, I don't really want to play you and don't want you to shoot, and do that all in the span of, like you just said, Blair, 3 or 4 weeks. So for Kansas, it's sort of difficult. If I was Kansas, I would play my best lineup. And, instead of saying, hey, how are you going to match up to West Virginia? I'm going to say, how is West Virginia going to guard Jalen Wilson off the dribble? How is Oscar Sheboy going to guard Jalen Wilson? And, we see this happen all the time. We can talk this to death before the game, but think about 2018 Kansas versus Villanova. You know what I mean? How is Villanova going to match up to Kansas? Well, how could Udoka Azubuike guard the guys on the perimeter? He couldn't. And Villanova rained in a bunch of threes, won the game. The game before that, how was KU going to match up to Duke? Because KU had a small lineup. Well, how was Duke going to match up to Kansas? How were they going to guard Svi Mikhailuk when he hit the big 3 at the end of the game? They didn't. They had a big man on him, and he got lost. So that's sort of the way that the game is moving. And so for Bill Self, it's just a difficult time right now because you want to have that extra week of practice to maybe put in some new players plays and do some more things with your 5-guard lineup, but you don't have that yet because you've got all these games crammed in together. So I think KU's 5-guard look is its best look. I think it's its best chance against West Virginia, but I think Bill Self just knows that most of his playbook is still with that one big in the lineup, and he loves his rebounds. So without David McCormick in there, it is going to be tougher for KU to get rebounds and to not completely get annihilated on the glass. So it's sort of a security blanket to go back to that one big. So yeah, that'll be the fascinating matchup tonight, and see if David McCormick can play any better than he has so far, because as of right now, yeah, it's been very difficult to keep him on the court just with the lack of efficiency he's had offensively and the lack of toughness he's shown defensively.
A lot of these thoughts are on your Quick Scout, which is posted on the with our story links here, and it's on kansascity.com right now. Also included in the Quick Scout is a predicted score. I will let the readers go to the link to find how you think this game is going to unfold, Jesse. But one thing that you wrote that I agree with and I've thought about is home court advantage, right? Doesn't seem to be much of a home court advantage because of just because of lack of fans, right? There'll be 2,500 fans at Allen Fieldhouse tonight, but it just seems to me that in a couple games, the one team in the Big 12 that's really have been impacted by the home, playing on the road at Lawrence is West Virginia. They have lost some big leads in this building, and some of the best atmospheres that I've ever encountered at Allen Fieldhouse have been Kansas comeback victories over West Virginia. I don't think that's a factor tonight.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of one, but that's exactly what I wrote in there. It's just it's a little bit different this time. And you think about some of the greatest comebacks that Kansas has had under Bill Self. It's been West Virginia at Allen Fieldhouse. And then what happens is the crowd just rises up. You kind of feel that tension, emotion, excitement. And if you're an official, you just can't help but sort of get involved in the storyline. You know what I mean? And Kansas has benefited from a lot of foul calls late in those games. Obviously, in one of those games, Devontae Graham just went nutso from 3. But that's sort of kind of the small edge that you get. Hey, you're down 12, you drive to the lane, you miss the shot, but there's a late whistle and you get 2 free throws. Those sorts of things aren't going to add up as much here when there's 2,500 down Fieldhouse. Now, I think we saw from the Texas Tech game that the officials still get plenty wrapped up in the home court advantage, with Texas Tech getting 6 or 7 or 8 or 100 million charge calls taken in that particular game, whether they were legitimate ones or not. So I think it's just a difference of magnitude. You know what I mean? Is Kansas still going to get a home court advantage tonight? Yeah. I mean, are they probably going to get a couple more foul calls than they would somewhere else? Probably. Is it a 5 or 6 point thing instead of a 2 or 3 point thing? No, it's not that anymore. They might get a couple points, but as you just spoke about, Blair, they've needed every bit of help to beat West Virginia in some of these games where they've gotten behind early. And if KU gets down 18 in the first half in this one, it's over. They're not going to come back. I mean, it's just a little bit different. Plus, West Virginia is not fouling as much as it has in other years, so that's going to help them as well. But I agree with you. It's just a little bit different. And early on in the Big 12 season, I know some of the top teams were playing on the road early, but the home court advantage was basically nothing at all. I could look up the updated stats, but I think that the home team has now won. Yeah, home team has won 2 of 7 games in the Big 12 so far. Again, very small sample, and a lot of that is hey, Baylor started on the road, and obviously Kansas started on the road, those sorts of things. But it's probably not going to be the same sort of big advantage that it can be in years past, and definitely has been when West Virginia has come to the Fieldhouse.
That Kansas opponents are more willing to take charges than Jayhawks teams historically will be the subject of another podcast for us, Jesse, because I want to talk to you about that. I think that's really interesting, but we'll save that for another day. I want to get to a little bit of recruiting news, Gary. You reported that KU got a commitment from the who will be the first member of the class of 2022. I hope I'm pronouncing his last name right. Kyle Cuff. I think that's how I pronounce it. Combo guard from the my favorite school, Blair Academy in New Jersey. So, hey, tell me a little bit about what do we know about him, Gary?
He's 6'2", a combo guard. He wants to play point. I think their school season's been delayed or called off because of COVID. I'm not sure. Although he's from New York, maybe it's been called off in New York, but not Blair Academy. But he he's ranked 78th by Rivals. Seems like there's a lot of comparisons to Russell Robinson's recruitment because his dad went to Rice High School like Russell. He knows Russell. And the list of schools was kind of different. It was not all the blue bloods. It was K-State, Georgia, St. John's, Pitt, A&M, KU, and he's supposed to be really athletic. Another guy who can jump out of the gym and all that. He actually had an interesting signing video. Usually they're kind of stupid, but they did a little documentary on him, and it was kind of neat because they went to his grandmother's house, both grandmothers. They showed how important it is to sign with a blue blood when you're from inner city New York. They interviewed some of his teammates, and when the kid committed, again, usually they're kind of cocky and everything. This kid, you might want to check out the video on Twitter. His face was just so, it sounds stupid, but so joyful, and people were mobbing him. Because, New York City, they think of Kansas as, they don't know where it is, but it's the blue blood of blue bloods, with a Kentucky and stuff. And it's really a neat video about, he walks around his neighborhood a little bit. And I don't know how he'll do here, but if you watch that video, you probably root for him. And Russell is all of our favorites. He is such a nice guy, and this kid seems like the same type of story. Doesn't sound like he'll be a star, but everybody says he's in the gym all the time, and he could be a rotation player. But he's thrilled to be coming to KU.
Russell Robinson, of course, starting guard on the 2008 national championship team. And hey, look, there's nothing silly about joy this time of year, especially. So yeah. I'm going to look forward. I'm going to go watch that video. But right now, we're going to take a break. Having wrapped up our conversation with Jesse Newell and Gary Bedore, we're going to take a break. When we come back, you will hear from Souichi Terada, who's going to talk about Mizzou's bowl opponent. And after Souichi, you will hear from Kellis Robinett on Kansas State and the return of Skylar Thompson for next season. Hey, it's Blair. We have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners, unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of Sports Pass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns presented on the kansascity.com site, and it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. Your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of kansascity.com and the Kansas City Star, and that support has never been more important. Please visit kansascity.com/SportsBeatKC offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening. Okay, we're back, and now talking to Souichi Terada, who covers Mizzou. Hello, Souichi. How you doing?
Hi, Blair. The regular season is finally over. A very weird season, but we hit the finish line.
Yes, and got in all 10 games. Not every college football program can say they played their full schedule, but Mizzou is one that can, and finished 5-5. There was no intrigue about whether they would be a bowl team. We knew they were going to be in a bowl game, but when Selection Sunday came a couple of days ago, we all sort of had our thoughts. We were looking at other projections and seeing where the Tigers could end up. And as it turns out, they did not end up where I thought they were going to go, which was someplace in Florida. Mm-hmm. And maybe the loss to Mississippi State affected that. What did you hear about how it shook out for Missouri with its bowl invitation, which is to the Music City Bowl to play Iowa on December 30th?
Yeah, Blair, the thing is, I think all the projections had them probably going to a Florida Bowl, right? Whether that was the Gator Bowl or the Outback Bowl, most likely. I think I saw the Journalism Bowl, Mizzou versus Northwestern quite often.
Yeah, you were stoked about that possibility.
Well, very tongue-in-cheek, I might add. But yeah, obviously that then end up happening. Mizzou is actually heading to Nashville for the Music City Bowl, and really, Blair, the thing I kind of took away from talking to Jim Sturk and Eli Drinkwitz on that Sunday when after the bowl announcements was that they wanted to be in Nashville. They specifically wanted this day, which is December 30th. Mostly because they really wanted to get their players home for parts of Christmas and in the New Year. So obviously you can't do that with the January 2nd bowl. So that's kind of what I took away from it. And you got to realize too that this year the bowl selection process is a little bit different. And Jim Sturk talked about that a little bit. Any non-pandemic year, most of the time you submit a list of preferences, and the bowl committees and the SEC usually kind of works with you on that and make sure you get into the bowl that you had on your list. But this year, essentially what happened was after the Citrus Bowl took Auburn, because Auburn was 6-4, the SEC teams were listed by winning percentage. So Mizzou was atop that list because they were 500. And I believe the only other 500 team is LSU, and obviously Mizzou has a tiebreaker over LSU. So because of that, they essentially chose the not the Outback Bowl, but the Music City Bowl, just because of the reasons I outlined about the timing and all of these things. And so that's kind of why I think fans were a little bit mad. I always don't quite get why fans were a little mad about a bowl slate and the tiers and everything. I always look at it as, one, is it a cool city? And Nashville, I think, is. I know it's a pandemic and everything, but two, are you playing a good team? And number 15, Iowa certainly fits that bill, which is why, number 15 in the nation, 6-game winning streak. That is a very good team, Blair, and I think that's why Mizzou fans should be excited for, regardless of roster limitations and a lot of other things. But that is why Mizzou is in the Music City Bowl.
Oh, Souichi, the longer you cover college sports, the more you will learn about it doesn't take much for fans to feel slighted about anything, including their bowl destination. But I totally agree with you. I think this is it's a great city. It's a good bowl. It's drivable for anybody who gets their hands on a ticket to go. So. And I like the date as well. There's something interesting about that date, isn't there? We just had a huge day in Missouri athletics with the football game against Georgia and the basketball game against Illinois that night. That was what was I can't remember the date, but it was a couple weeks ago, right?
Yeah, December 12th. It was
12th. That's what it was.
Yeah,
the 12th.
Georgia and Illinois, and then now you got Iowa and Tennessee.
Right, got the basketball game against Tennessee that day as well. So football game, I think it kicks off at 2:30, right? And then the basketball game is in the evening.
Yeah, it's at 8 p.m.
At Mizzou, right? At Mizzou. Yep. So another cool day. But one player, at least one player we know will not be accompanying Missouri to the bowl game, and that is linebacker Nick Bolton. We have seen the last of his time in a Missouri uniform, and what a time it was. What went into his decision not to return?
Well, Blair, he is a projected first-round pick, so I don't think anybody can really blame him. I remember midway through the season, we were talking Nick Bolton with Mizzou defensive coordinator Ryan Walters, and he kind of made a comment that, we'd love you back, Nick, but go to the pros, go make your money and everything like that. So Nick Bolton has played his last snap. Right tackle Larry Bourne has also played his last snap. Actually, he declared for the NFL draft. So luckily, Mizzou fans will get to see Larry Roundtree III, running back, one last time, fresh off that second-team All-SEC pick. He said he will play, and then he'll probably finish his Mizzou career then, as he's accepted a Senior Bowl invite and all that. But yeah, for Bolton, it's that's a big blow. But Mizzou has, they knew, talking to the players and coaches, they knew that this was going to happen, and they were I won't say they're ready for it, but I think mentally they were at least ready for it. So we'll see how that turns out, at least on the field.
I'll certainly miss watching him play because that guy was noticeably good on the field, and I have come around on my thinking on this over the years. This is kind of a new phenomenon: the players opting out of bowl games to concentrate on their draft position and their draft shape and all that. At first, when it first happened, it was a decade or so ago, I was thinking, oh, wow, really? You're going to do that and and turn your back on your teammates, all that stuff. And the more I think about it, the more I've thought about it over the years, the more I absolutely do not blame the player for making this decision. There's a lot at stake for Nick Bolton and others who have made this decision, and a lot of their financial future is at stake, and a a catastrophic injury in a bowl game just doesn't, why risk it? There absolutely no reason to do that. So congratulations on a fantastic college career, and I look forward to seeing him play on Sundays. A little bit of another kind of Mizzou football personnel topic. There was a new safety on the field for the Tigers at Mississippi State, and dang, he was pretty good.
Blair, I would say a little bit more than pretty good. I would say one of the few bright spots for Mizzou against Mississippi State in that loss. And obviously, we're talking about Sean Robinson for any fans who didn't pick that up. The former quarterback who started the first 2 games, you saw him prowling the secondary. And this was all by design, according to Drinkwitz. He actually said on his radio show that Sean Rob was going to be playing on special teams again because he did that against Georgia. But he was also going to be playing a little bit of safety, and he saw that. And he was kind of everywhere, playing as a dime back. So it wasn't too complicated. Obviously, it's not going to get much more complicated than running an offense as a quarterback. But you saw Sean Rob out there. He finished with 5 tackles, one of them half tackle for loss. He had a PBU, and he also had an interception, which was a really good play. But I don't know if you actually saw the play, but he caused the deflection. Then he kind of strong-armed it into his possession. And then the announcers were like, oh, hold up. Sean Robinson got an interception. And I know it was garbage time, and I know it was against the backup and all these things, but I think that was a really cool moment. He was all smiles after the loss. We got to talk to him a little bit. And he was pretty transparent about the idea that, this was kind of a struggle for him mentally to accept that. I mean, you play quarterback your whole life growing up, and then your head coach comes up to you, and asks and wonders if you want to be a safety. Like, I'm sure that's kind of a blow, especially for him, who he was a really highly recruited quarterback coming out of high school. 4-star, top 200 recruit, U.S. Army All-American. He had all these things, but the fact that he stayed on, and I think it was really cool that he said he wanted to play for Mizzou. He had all these things going for him. So it's just one of those stories that you hear and see, and you just feel good for the guy just because he's worked hard and he's earned that spot.
Yeah, I certainly did. When I read about it, I did not see the game. Kind of got lost in the playing those games on college conference championships Saturday, but I was keeping up with it, and I saw where Robinson had an interception. I'm thinking, wait a second, really? That was amazing. So good for him. And all right, Souichi, we can't let you go. Look, there's not going to be a lot of lead time going into this. Mizzou basketball, nationally ranked Mizzou basketball, plays at 6 p.m. tonight against the Bradley Braves. Not necessarily a blue blood program, but one that's off to a terrific start this season, and one the Tigers, I'm sure, will respect tonight.
Yeah, Blair. If you look at each of Mizzou's opponent, barring one, Prairie View A&M, and that was canceled, pretty much everyone on that non-con schedule is at the very least respectable. Even Oral Roberts, they were projected to finish, I believe, second in their league. You have Liberty, who specifically runs, kind of a complicated offense that Conzo Martin specifically scheduled and wanted to go up against. And then now you have a Bradley team who has won back-to-back Mountain Valley Conference tournament championships. They were an NCAA team the last 2 years, obviously not last year with the pandemic, but this is another team, I think, who's very big up front. Their center is 7'1". They have a power forward at 6'8". They're one of the better rebounding teams in the nation, one of the best in defending 2-point field goals. So this is a team that, if you're not careful, they will give you a fight. They lost on the road at ranked Xavier 51-50 by only 1 point. So, you know what, Blair, by all indications, Mizzou is going to take this seriously, especially with their first game ever since that bragging rights win, however many days ago. It's been a blur. But one day we'll take this seriously. I won't be too surprised if they see some rust, but man, it's what, Blair, I do appreciate the fact that Conzo is willing to schedule these tough opponents, just because it is a little bit boring watching a sub 300 KenPom team come in and just beat up on them. So it should be another game, a good game tonight at Mizzou Arena for the number 14 ranked Mizzou Tigers.
Yeah, how about that? They're up to 14 in the polls. They'll keep climbing as they continue to win. And like I said, we get Tennessee in the SEC opener on the horizon. So, all right, we're gonna. Hey, so it's on bowl game, right? The 20 is there a game between this Bradley and Tennessee?
No, it's they have another long layoff Conzo said
Gotcha.
he's hopeful to get another game, but just with the schedule. And Blair, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention the Iowa football situation. There's a lot of news to cover in this podcast, but obviously the Hawkeyes are on pause for COVID-19, reported late last night. So just something to keep an eye on. They are planning to regroup. For what it's worth, Mizzou is regrouping on, I believe, either Christmas or the 26th. So it's not like it's not the end of the world for Iowa or the game or anything like that, but just something to keep an eye on. Just another thing in 2020, I guess.
Wow, I was into my windup to throw it to Kellis in Kansas State, and you dropped that piece of information on me. I did not know that. That's really interesting. I'm glad you brought it up, and absolutely, we will keep an eye on the status of Iowa football with Coach Kirk Friends. So, all right, Souichi, let us throw it to Kellis Robinett and say goodbye to you. Thanks for joining us. Have a great holiday season.
All right, thanks, Blair, too.
Kellis Robinett joins us. Hey, Kellis, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Blair. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you, too. Hope it's a good one in the Robinett household. Hey, so we're covering events and got a lot of things going on over the weekend, and then all of a sudden this tweet pops up on my Twitter timeline. Skylar Thompson says he's coming back. I kind of felt that he was, but I wasn't 100% sure. Did that decision surprise you at all?
No, kind of the word behind the scenes in Manhattan for the last couple of weeks has been he was heavily leaning toward coming back. It was more of just a question of when he was going to announce he was coming back more so than is he coming back or not. And I think that happened just because, Will Howard didn't light it up while he was off injured, and it just seems like Kansas State could really use a veteran quarterback next season, even if they want to still find ways to play Will Howard and incoming quarterback Jake Rubley. They could really use his leadership, and I think everybody could see that without him last year, this season, I should say, they went from 4-1 to 0-5, just like that. And a lot of people would say, boy, he was the missing link. If you had him out there on offense, they win two, maybe even 3 more games, and all of a sudden things look a whole lot better. So, it's very rare for a quarterback to want to come back for a 6th season. He would, if he ends up starting next year, he'll be a very rare 5th-year starter in the Big 12. But I guess it was just an opportunity that was too good for him to pass up. And, who knows? Maybe if he comes back and has a really good season, he could get on the pro radar at some point.
Right. Okay, you mentioned what the depth chart's going to look like. There'll be talent in at the position. In college football anymore, though, that usually doesn't translate into having depth. Usually, one guy leaves or there's some sort of transaction when you have 3 players at the position at that position who could be a starter. So I agree. Skylar Thompson has to come in and start. He was led him to the victory over Oklahoma. He's the starter, right? He is the starting quarterback. But does that mean Jake Rubley comes in and just says, "Okay, I'll just abide my time and back, be the backup as highly rated as he is." And Will Howard, does he have a decision to make on this? How do you see it playing out?
Yeah, super interesting. It's a scenario we haven't seen, I don't think at all in Manhattan since, the early Bill Snyder days, maybe. Think about what they're going to have at quarterback next year. They might have the most experienced passer in all of college football in Skylar Thompson. I can't imagine too many people have started more games than him. You got a freshman or sophomore, whatever you want to call him, and Will Howard, who started 7 games this year and showed some signs that he could be the quarterback of the future, even though he did struggle at times as well. And then you got Jake Rubley coming in, who ESPN tabs as the number 25 recruit in the entire nation this year, the highest touted guy they've had since Josh Freeman 14 years ago. So it's an interesting situation. They're going to have 3 players I think everybody wants to see play, and I think they're going to find a way to play all 3. It's just like you mentioned. Wow. People don't want to sit behind other quarterbacks for a year. That's just a great recipe for somebody to transfer. And I'm not saying it's going to be a quarterback by committee or anything like that, but you saw the last 2 seasons, even when Skylar was the unquestioned starter, they found ways to get John Holcomb in there when he was the backup. They found ways to get Will Howard on the field this year before Skylar got hurt. I think they're going to keep doing that, if for nothing else, to keep Skylar healthy, or at least have an opportunity to keep him healthier. We saw Will Howard is a very gifted runner. That was perhaps his best attribute this season. So maybe you find ways to have a package for him next season. And then, Jake, it's pretty rare to see 3 quarterbacks out there, but I bet they could find a package for him too. And that's what's so intriguing about this to me. I've had some K-State fans say that Skylar coming back ends whatever intrigue there was at quarterback. He's the presumptive starter. He's going to take every snap. I don't see it that way. I think they're going to find a way to play off 3 guys, and it's a good problem to have, probably better than just having the 2 newcomers. But it's going to be interesting to watch next season for sure.
And Skylar Thompson's not the only Kansas State player who announced he was coming back. We spent so many weeks talking about Kansas State players who were transferring out of the program, but now some players are making a decision to stay or to come in. So bring us up to date on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, so we've had two key players say they're coming back. Skylar was obviously the big one. That's the decision everybody was waiting for. But then also Bronson Massey, who started some games at defensive end this season and at times looked like a really good pass rusher. He's going to come back for an extra senior season next year. And I think that's really big for the defensive line because they're going to lose Wyatt Hubert for sure. As a junior, he's going to go on to the NFL draft. And they could really use a veteran presence on that line, somebody who's proven he can get after the quarterback. And that's what Massey is. He's never truly lit it up on the defensive line, but I think given his experience next year, he could take a nice step forward. And I suppose we've also seen Bradley Moore say he's going to turn pro. We've seen Harry Trotter say he's moving on. Brock Monty and Justin Hughes have all said they're leaving. The key players I think we're waiting on still are Noah Johnson at center, who if I had to guess, I think he'll come back, but he's also a veteran too, so you never know. Once you see guys getting up to be pretty old, some guys just get tired of college. But I think he might come back. And then we're still waiting to hear from Elijah Sullivan and Cody Fletcher, a couple senior linebackers, who if either of them decide to come back could add some very important depth and talent at that position.
Okay. Hey, let's keep it on football. I was interested in asking your opinion of the college football playoff lineup. We know Kansas State's not going to a bowl game this year. They announced that they would not go, and I think that's a good decision. Long year for the Wildcats, and they've been going at it since June when they got back on campus. So K-State not going to a bowl game. But the bowl lineup was announced along with the college football playoff lineup, and we know the semifinals are going to be Alabama versus Notre Dame and Clemson versus Ohio State. I think the Clemson-Ohio State matchup will be the 17th in the 7-year history of the college football playoff. They seem like they play every year. Anyway, the only real surprise or intrigue going into that was who would end up at number 4, maybe among Notre Dame, Texas A&M, and Cincinnati. What did you think of the outcome? Did the college football playoff committee get it right?
Oh, I mean, I'd like to say no. I mean, I just hate to see the cookie cutter system they have. It seems like there's only 6 teams every season that have a realistic chance of getting into the playoff, and those are the teams they keep going with. So I would prefer to see another team in there than Notre Dame. I mean, historically, has it ever worked out when a team gets just mauled in its last game and they still get the benefit of the doubt? It seems to me that that's not a very good sign for them moving forward. We saw it with Oklahoma when they lost a very famous game around these parts to Kansas State, Big 12 championship game. The old BCS committee didn't know what to do and said, all right, Oklahoma, you're still going to the championship game anyway. Well, they lost that game. They didn't look very good. Right. I think Nebraska, didn't they lose to Colorado in similar fashion?
Didn't even play in the Big 12 championship game, and then got rolled by Miami in the national championship game.
Right. So they weren't even Big 12 North champs, but they got to go play the national championship game and lost big. So I think that's a bad sign. If you can't win your last game, especially against another team that's in the field on a neutral field, I would much rather have seen Cincinnati or even Coastal Carolina, somebody, A&M, anyone other than Notre Dame in there. And I'm not thrilled about Ohio State either. I think you need to play more than 6 games. And it's just a shame that there's really not a great avenue for Cincinnati, teams like Cincinnati, Coastal Carolina, or even a team like Oklahoma, who had some struggles early and then figured things out. I mean, why should they be completely disqualified because of 2 losses months ago? If we were actually picking some teams that could actually compete with Alabama or Clemson, I would think Oklahoma would be right up there at the top the way they finished the year. So I'm hopeful. I'm sure you're with me. I'm hopeful that at some point we'll expand to 8 teams and be more inclusive here. But at least with this year, given the options out there, I would have liked to see Cincinnati instead of Notre Dame.
Yeah, I am with you on the expansion to 8. I just think if there was ever a year, because of the unusual nature of this college football season where Ohio State just played 6 games and nobody played the same amount of games, that you could slide a Cincinnati or a Coastal Carolina into that 4th spot and made it I think would have done a lot for a feeling of inclusiveness in college football. It doesn't have that right now. What else could Cincinnati have done? They ran the table, won all their games, and even that's not good enough, against a team that had a bad loss in its final game or a team that won 6 games. I'm not saying Notre Dame and Ohio State aren't 2 of the 4 best college football teams in the country. I'm just saying if there was a year that you could sort of make an exception, or you can justify putting in an 11-0 Cincinnati team, this would have been the year to do it. But instead, this will be the 7th year of the college football playoff, so 28 different positions. They've been played by 11 different teams. Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
It's wild, and I guess the argument I would say to people who say, a team like Cincinnati or Coastal couldn't compete. I mean, maybe that's true. Maybe Ohio State and Notre Dame are the best teams, but I would say including teams like that has never hurt the NCAA tournament. Has anyone cried? Did anyone cry when UMBC beat Virginia? I mean,
nope.
No.
That was, and Virginia even benefited from that because they used it as motivation to the next year and won the national championship. So
right. I mean, who was the better team? Virginia. If they played 100 times, Virginia would come out the better team. But that inclusiveness in the NCAA tournament makes it so special. People love Cinderella. I think it would go a long way for the sport if they would expand and start letting some of those teams have a shot.
Another entity that did not mind seeing that outcome was Kansas State, which played UMBC instead of number 1 Virginia in the next game. Okay, Kellis, we'll pick up the basketball talk next week when we chat again. Great catching up with you, and have a great holiday season.
All right, same to you and all the listeners. Merry Christmas, everybody.
That'll do it for today. Thanks to our production staff of Derek Donovan, Beth Welsh, Monty Davis, Randy Mason, Jeff Rosen, Chris Fickett, and Savannah Smith, and now Todd Feedback. Thanks, Todd. Tip of the cap to Jesse Newell, Gary Bedore, Souichi, Terada, and Kellis Robinett for stopping by and talking college sports. Links to their stories can be found in the show notes and on kansascity.com. Hey, we got another deal for you, especially for those that want to deep dive into the Stars' terrific Chiefs coverage. For a limited time, you can subscribe to Sports Pass for 99 cents a month. That's right, 99 pennies a month. After 3 months, it auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless you cancel. So how do you get it? You go to kansascity.com/SportsPass2020. That's kansascity.com/SportsPass2020. You want more than just sports coverage? I know I do. Check out the entire Kansas City Star product, sports news, features, commentary, and analysis, the whole thing. You get all the stories written by my talented colleagues, plus additional news, sports, and business coverage with the e-edition. The details for all of these deals can be found at account.kansascity.com/subscribe. And if you're having trouble hunting down any of these offers, send me an email, bkerkhoff@kcstar.com, and we'll get you to the right place. So whether it's a sports pass or the full subscription, you're getting and supporting the best sports and news coverage in Kansas City and helping us produce programs like SportsBeat KC. Thanks for listening. We'll be back tomorrow, Wednesday, with another episode.